Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our joint committee with the Committee on Energy, Economic Development and Tourism and our good friends from the Committee on Transportation. It's our 3 o'clock agenda, February 7th in room 224. Before we begin, I have to mention a few housekeeping measures. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. In the unlikely event that we hit some technical turbulence and this hearing takes a terrible, disastrous nosedive, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding matters, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. For those of you participating remotely, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. With that said, we will go to our first bill, that is Senate Bill 2721 relating to energy. First on our testifiers list is Isaac Choi from Dcca.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, committee members. Josh Michaels on behalf of the Director of Tax. The department will stand on its testimony offering comments, and I'm available for any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. We have Mary Bong Yokota from the Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair Wakai, Chair Lee, Vice Chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Janine Udui. I am a Deputy Attorney General. I'll be providing testimony on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General this afternoon. This bill amends the state environmental response, energy, and food security tax on petroleum products to now include aviation fuel. As such, the bill may be challenged as interfering with or being contrary to federal law. Specifically, 49 U.S.C. section 47133 provides that local taxes collected on aviation fuel may only be used for specific purposes, such as operating or capital costs related to airports or airport systems. Because this bill would direct the taxes collected on aviation fuel to funds and accounts that are not exclusively used for these specific purposes, it is in conflict with federal law and would be subject to challenge under the Supremacy Clause. According to the preemption doctrine, the Supremacy Clause invalidates state laws that interfere with or are contrary to federal law. We recommend the bill be amended to comport with 49 U.S.C. section 47133 to provide that the taxes collected on aviation fuel will be used exclusively for one or more of the permitted uses listed in that statute. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Janine. Next on our testifiers list is Ross Higashi from Department of Transportation.
Present, Chair.
Okay. We have Kirsten Baumgart Turner from the Office of Energy.
Aloha, Chair Wakai and Chair Lee and Vice Chairs Dcca and members of the committee. Excuse me, and Vice Chair Misalucha and Inouye. I see we have everybody there. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. Hold on a moment. Apologies. Okay, and members of the committees, thank you. So I just want to comment on this bill on behalf of our Chief Energy Officer, Scott Glenn, who's in Washington this week and bids his aloha to everyone. I'm the Deputy Energy Officer for the Hawaii State Energy Office. We just want to mention that provide comments to this bill, which we feel is important because all sectors need to contribute for Hawaii to achieve its net negative carbon goal as soon as practicable, but no later than 2045. The aviation sector is a top 10 global emitter whose emissions are expected to rise dramatically by mid-century. It's critical that the global aviation sector contribute its fair share towards mitigating climate change and the impacts on our state. In Hawaii, aviation accounted for nearly 23% of net greenhouse gas emissions in 2017. Hawaii has emerged as a climate leader, setting the aggressive and necessary statewide target to sequester this atmospheric carbon. An aviation fuel tax invites those that travel to Hawaii to partner with residents to reduce the harmful impacts of aviation and continue progress towards the state's carbon net negative target. The Hawaii Department of Taxation reports the 2021 liquid fuel tax base for aviation fuel to be more than 258 million gallons. A $1.05 per barrel tax on this volume, in other words, including aviation fuel in the barrel tax, would provide more than $6 million in collections annually, which could be used towards the development and implementation of sustainable aviation projects that are in line with the Deputy AG's comments about the use of the tax within under the grant purposes. HSEO defers to the appropriate agencies for comments on the aviation tax administration. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I stand by for questions.
Thank you, Kirsten. We have Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation.
Not present, Chair.
Okay. And we have Sean Williams on behalf of the Airlines for America.
Good afternoon, Chairs Wakai and Lee and Vice Chairs Misalucha. And in a way, my name is Sean Williams. I am with Airlines for America. We are the trade association of the major passenger and cargo airlines here in the United States. And I am here to respectfully oppose Senate Bill 2721. I think some of the points that I was going to make were made earlier by the Attorney General's office, but I think it's worth repeating that there is a federal revenue use rule with regard to aviation fuel taxes that is in place and has been in place since 1987. It does require, as was stated earlier, that aviation fuel tax proceeds must be used for aviation purposes at airports. And so we are concerned that this proposal, which, I'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, which is just bad policy to increase taxes to begin with, but we're concerned that it is also something that would be in violation of that federal law. Hawaii actually is already a fairly high tax state when it comes to taxes on commercial aviation fuel. This bill obviously would only make it worse. Hawaii is the ninth highest and has the ninth highest tax burden when it comes to taxes on jet fuel of all the 50 states, and making Hawaii less competitive in that regard is not good public policy. I just want to comment a bit also on our what we think is a very strong environmental record. Airlines contribute on average 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, despite driving much more than that, a higher percentage than that in terms of economic activity. But our continued goal and commitment is to reduce that number. We've made a commitment as an industry for net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and we've made a commitment to help to achieve 2 billion gallons of sustainable aviation fuel by 2030. So our environmental record and our commitments are very, very strong. We would actually look at this bill as an opportunity, we think, to work with the committees and to work with the legislature and the governor's office to help to promote the development of additional sustainable aviation fuel in the state of Hawaii. And we would welcome the opportunity to have that further conversation with you as the weeks of the legislative session go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. That's all we have for our live testimony. Members, any questions of those who joined us this afternoon? Nope. Anybody online want to ask those online? No? Okay. Thank you, members. We're going to go on to the second bill on this agenda, that is Senate Bill 2196, relating to electronic vehicle charging stations. First on our testifiers list is Kirsten Baumgart-Turner from the Office of Energy.
Aloha, Chairs Wakai and Lee and Vice Chairs Misaluchi and Inouye, members of the committee. Again, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, Deputy Energy Officer for the Hawaii State Energy Office, here on behalf of our Chief Energy Officer, Scott Glenn. It's our privilege today to provide comments on on SB 2196. The effort to achieve a decarbonized economy requires Hawaii's transportation systems to be increasingly fueled by renewable energy sources and to become less reliant on fossil fuels. So developing plans to integrate EV charging stations into residential parking areas ensures that our existing as well as our new communities are prepared for and support the state's clean energy transformation. The requirements of SB 2196 are consistent with existing requirements, such as those in Chapter 32 Building Energy Conservation Code of the City and County of Honolulu, which includes requiring parking stalls for newly constructed residential and multi-unit and commercial buildings to comply with an EV readiness compliance pathway. The same code also requires that when a building permit application involves the installation of a residential electrical panel and a parking area, a dedicated receptacle for an EV must be provided with a minimum AC level 2 charger in each enclosed attached garage. So requiring plans to be able to do this, we think, is a relatively mild step that should support implementation of the requirements already in place. And therefore, we support this measure and hope that the committee will pass it out. Stand by for questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for joining us, Kirsten. Next, we have Larry Furray from the Pearl City Neighborhood Board.
Yes, good afternoon and aloha, Chair Wakai and Chair Lee, Vice Chairs Misalucha and Inouye. The Pearl City Neighborhood Board is in strong support of SB 2196. I'm submitting this testimony as Chair of the Pearl City Neighborhood Board. Our board unanimously passed a resolution on September 28, 2021 that stated the requirement for community, homeowners, condominium associations, high-rise apartment building complexes to begin their planning for the integration of electric vehicle charging stations on their respective property. As Hawaii continues to develop a plan for energy efficiency and moving the state off fossil fuels, electric vehicles are becoming more popular for residents in our communities. We see more and more residents in single-family homes in Pearl City transiting into electric vehicles coupled with their own home integration and charging stations. Regretfully, I believe many of our Pearl City families that live in condo, high-rise apartments are being left behind because their property managers and board of directors have ignored this very important issue for their homeowner associations. They have not proactively planned for their homeowners and condo associations to begin setting aside reserve funds, begin the planning for the architecture with associated building permits for the required future integration of EV charging stations for the residents. Furthermore, the state and the city is also behind in this area for their subsidized housing and for seniors and lower income families. It is so important that the respective property managers take this as a priority for their associations that they manage and advise. Waiting to the last minute to begin planning EV charging stations will result in associations having to conduct monetary assessments from their homeowners to pay for this initiative, causing negative impact on so many residents. We respectfully request that you consider moving the completion date for this requirement out to 2035, which will allow the homeowner associations more time for the reserve fund planning and developing their EV charging architecture and integration plan. I most strongly support SB 2096, and also, if you could, I please ask that you consider trying to find some tax incentives for these associations. I personally, for the last 37 years, have been on the president or vice president of my homeowners association. We hope we can build a model for other associations in Pearl City and Oahu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Next, we have June Chi from Hawai'i Electric.
Good afternoon, Chair Wakai, Chair Lee, and members of the committee. My name is June Chi, testifying on behalf of Hawai'i Electric, and we have submitted written testimonies supporting the intent of this measure. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for joining us, June. Philip Nerney.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, and committee members. My name is Philip Nerney. I'm testifying on behalf of the Community Associations Institute Hawaii chapter. We've submitted written testimony in which we've underlined that we support the 100% renewable energy goal and only have practical concerns about legislation being considered. Specifically, the testimony that I've put forward reference the Act 164 Working Group final report. This area has been the subject of a study with a wide variety of stakeholders, and the findings are a matter of record. Those findings in particular, as relates to my testimony, are that some projects simply lack the infrastructure and cannot accommodate this technology either for electrical capacity reasons or the design of their project or how things are deeded. Current law already allows any condominium owner pursuant to HRS 196-7.5 to install electrical vehicle charging station on their own initiative. The question is whether, in anticipation of a more electrified transportation sector, associations should have that infrastructure in place. Certainly new developments, absolutely, and only with respect to projects that have these difficulties that are practical, real, and insurmountable does the association have concerns. So we would reference the Act 164 final report because this has been studied. There are findings, and I'm not saying anything that wasn't a conclusion or a finding of that working group. If a mandate is going to continue to be part of this legislation, we've proposed alternative language that would provide for the implementation of such plans unless a design professional could certify that there are practical or economic, technical or economic limitations. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Nerney. That's all I have for live testifiers. Members, any questions of those who have joined us? Senator Revere? No, not on this bill. Or the other.
Mr. Nerney, please, question. Thank you. I was going to ask DCCA this question, so I don't know if this is an appropriate chair, but who would enforce this? And so, Mr. Nerney, as in your association, maybe you would know who enforces statutes like this. If this were to pass and an association failed to act, what happens?
Well, it's speculative, but certainly any particular aggrieved owner could point to this law and bring a cause of action in civil court. I don't think that there is likely that other constituencies will ignore the issue over time as well. So I do think it would be enforceable as a general proposition, but we do have the concerns that I have stated and that the Act 164 working group found.
Right. So, the Chair, then I'd like to ask one more question on the same testifier. So regarding the concerns that you've mentioned, such as there's no space available or they can't readily get the electricity there, or they don't have the capacity for that much. Would that be that could cause some litigation between parties too, right? And then kind of be unresolved and everybody loses.
Yes, Senator. I will only relate what I have been told by a specific client in the Waikiki area. The representative of that entity informed me that she had communications with Hawaiian Electric. Now, I'm not vouching other than, she's always been credible to me, but that Hawaiian Electric had suggested that for some reason, they could not supply additional electrical capacity to that particular project, or at least not sufficiently to enable them to upgrade to those kinds of improvements. So, you know, for the broad run of associations, we absolutely agree that this is the future, and there is no doubt that this is a direction to be considered. We only ask that the practical limitations be recognized, and thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Any other questions, Senator Misalucha?
This is for Larry Furray. Aloha, Larry, and thank you for your
Aloha, Senator.
leadership at the Pearl City Neighborhood Board. And I know you have been advocating for this. The board passed a resolution back in September. But what can you say to the smaller condo associations who feel that this might impose undue hardship?
Well, first of all, just to let you know, I live in Waiau, Waiau Gardens, Sky B. We have 114 families, and there is not one electric vehicle on this property. And the reason is there's no place to plug in. And of course, I'm a member. I'm right now vice chair for our homeowners association, our board of directors. But we are already researching to figure out how we could integrate the capability here. But Senator, can you repeat your question again? I just lost the train of thought on that.
Oh, sure. So I just wanted, because I know you're an advocate for this, and certainly it's laudable and it's in line with the state's mandate to be sustainable. And just wanted to find out though, what would you say to the smaller condo associations who feel that this may cause undue hardship?
It will be undue hardship if they don't plan for it. We have plenty of time to look at this, the capability to integrate, and also if our homework is done right with other homeowners association, there's no sense of reinventing the wheel. Let them go ahead and build a model, and then everybody follows suit. My concern is that if homeowners association are not planning for this, we're going to get to the year 2035, and you're going to start to see lawsuits, probably from homeowners to their association saying, why did you leave us behind? And we need to transition to electric vehicles. So I'm in total support of this bill, and there needs to be at least direction for our homeowners and apartments. And I don't really buy off on this Hawai'i Electric not being able to provide enough power. It's a separate power line. And also, and here's the other thing, we're looking at integrating solar technology with this. So it's all self-sufficient. It all builds by itself for its charging capability. But I've been also figuring out that for an extra $20 added to the maintenance fee over the next 8 years, it pays for itself.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Sure. Members, any further questions?
Chair, just one follow-up.
Yes, of course.
Thanks. Mr. Nerney, if you're available. You still with us? Oh,
Yes,
there you are.
Shirley.
Yeah, thanks. I think to Mr. Furray's point that obviously it's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of investment and a lot of cooperation trying to figure out what that future is going to look like. But clearly, as our automakers are beginning to cease production of gas cars, with some of the first major manufacturers, even just 4 years from now, starting to go down that road, and certainly GM and the others in the next 10 or so years. It seems like obviously folks in multi-unit dwelling situations and condos aren't going to have much of a choice at that point. So it's going to have to be funded. So going to your testimony, you had cited the task force, which wrapped up a few years ago, looking at how to fund these kinds of investments. The one thing that, just from a practical point, just setting aside the legalese and everything else, the recommendation the task force made was to have, as I recall, ratepayers fund those kinds of upgrades. Is that right?
To tell you the truth, I didn't look at it for that purpose when I was testifying. But what I would say is that I've spoken to a representative of CAI National who suggested that in the recent federal funding for infrastructure, there should be funds that may be of assistance for this. Certainly, there are a lot of mandates that do impose pressure on associations, and I very much appreciate the neighborhood board chair's comments, because certainly there's planning. Associations have a role. We don't question that in any way, shape, or form. But we do say that it's a societal problem and a societal transition, and that the funding should be enabled either through tax credits or some other means or incentives or available federal funding to support associations as they make this transition, which they definitely should, with the exception of those particular places that just have logistical problems.
No, I appreciate that. I think what I was basically getting at was, I think if that was, I'm reasonably sure the recommendation of the task force, because we were looking at it when I was on the Energy Committee in the House, was to rate base those improvements, which basically means have all the ratepayers on Oahu subsidize condo owners. So people living in single family homes paying on their electric bills to ultimately pay for the improvements in multi-unit dwellings, which I think from just pure practical political purposes is pretty unlikely, because it's just a question of fairness. And we're talking about probably in the aggregate hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, which we just can't do. My only point was, obviously, if we don't have another alternative, and I think you're right, there is probably some federal funds that might be available in the short term, but certainly not that kind of money. So how would you suggest we sort of advance a conversation about how to ultimately resolve this issue over where we're going to do this and how?
If the committees are focused on mandates, then in our testimony, we had proposed some language that we would ask the committees to consider, because it comports with the current bill's intent and just says that if a design professional will certify, hey, this particular project can't do it, that they wouldn't be saddled with an impossible task. That's the limit of our concern. Otherwise, we fully support the direction for whatever it's worth. I drive an electric vehicle. I have PV on my house, and nobody on our committee is against the new technological future or the energy goals of the state. So the language we had proposed in our testimony would be something we'd ask the committee to consider if a mandate is still going to follow the conclusion of this hearing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments, and appreciate the time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Any further questions of those who have testified or joined us live? Okay, if not, we're going to take a brief recess prior to taking the vote. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. Reconvening the Joint Committees on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, and our friends from the Committee on Transportation. We have two items on our 3 o'clock agenda that we are about to vote on. First one is Senate Bill 2721. This is relating to energy tax. This is going to create a tax on aviation fuel. We're going to call this special fund the Flight Assistance Tax. We heard loud and clear from many that we can't use this for just whatever we want. It has to have some kind of connection to aviation. So this fuel assistance tax, the proceeds that are gotten in this tax will be divvied up in this way. Half of it, or 50% of the funds, will go to airport repair and maintenance, operational expenses, and the like. 30% will go to airport innovation projects. Sometimes the airport seems to be hampered because of a lack of funds to do innovative things on its premises, and we're going to give them funds to be able to pursue some of those ideas. And then 20% will go to aerospace development, everything from flight schools to perhaps launch pad for space tourism, as we jettison some tourists into space that may want that experience, but prepare for perhaps building a spaceport here in Hawaii with these funds. So those are the recommendations for amendments to Senate Bill 2721. Members, any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
For Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, this is in reference to Senate Bill 2721. The chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Misalucha votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, with 5 votes, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Committee on Transportation, voting on SB 2721, same recommendation.
The Committee on Transportation recommends that SB 2721 is to pass with amendments. Chair Lee.
Aye.
Okay, Vice Chair goes with reservations. Senator Dcca.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Shimabukuro.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Favela.
Aye.
Okay, measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Members, we're going to move on to the second bill, that is Senate Bill 2196, relating to electronic vehicle charging stations. Want to pass this measure out with 2 amendments. First one being that we're going to replace electric vehicles with zero emission vehicles, just to make sure that we're kind of flexible in the future, that if hydrogen develops or if some other form of transportation fuel develops, that we would embrace that. So just change electric vehicles to zero emission vehicles. And the second amendment will be to have this prospective, so affecting any future condos or apartment complexes that are going to be built in the future, will take into account the necessity for a zero emission vehicle charging station, so as not to impact some of our long-standing buildings, which will have to pay a hefty sum to retrofit themselves for this new zero emission world. And keep in mind also, we have all kinds of incentives for public charging stations. We want to be able to kind of compel the public to go utilize those instead of just always having this mindset that we're going to charge only at home. So we have that available to condo owners in the future. So those are the 2 amendments that are suggested by the committee. Any discussion, members? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
For Energy, or Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, in reference to Senate Bill 2196, the chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Misalucha votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, with 5 votes, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Committee on Transportation, voting on SB 2196, same recommendation.
Committee on Transportation Chair's recommendations are to pass SB 2196 with amendments. Chair Lee.
Aye.
The Vice Chair goes aye. Senator Dcca.
Aye.
Senator Shimabukuro.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. We are done with our 3 o'clock agenda.
Hello.
Good afternoon. This is the official, this is the 310 agenda for the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism. My name is Senator Bennett Misalucha, Vice Chair of the committee. Here in the room with me is my esteemed and very energetic colleague and Chair of this committee, Glenn Wakai, along with Senator Gil Revere, while joining us remotely are Senator Chris Lee and Senator Favela. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business, and public notice will be posted on the legislature website. For testifiers participating remotely, your audio will be muted and video disabled before it is your turn to testify. Just a friendly reminder for our testifiers, you have a minute to summarize your written testimony. We want to thank you in advance for your understanding as we're trying to make the process efficient as well. So let's proceed with the first item on our agenda, and that is SB 2695 relating to cryptocurrency, establishing a blockchain and cryptocurrency task force. Here with us to testify on Zoom is Iris Ikeda for Dcca DFI, Division of Financial Institution. Iris, go ahead.
Aloha, Senator Misalucha and members of the committee. So thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill. My name is Iris Ikeda, and I'm the Commissioner of the Division of Financial Institutions for DCCA. So, as you know, DFI has been really active in the area of digital currency legislation, including partnering with the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation to establish the Digital Currency Innovation Lab. And this is really to study digital currency transactions in the state. And DFI, our focus is pretty narrow. It's really on financial services provided to the public. And so our comments on this bill is that if this task force is to be convened, the scope of the review should be broadened to encompass other aspects of the industry besides possible legislation, including but not limited to the development of a plan for expansion of blockchain adoption in both the private and public sector. And that would include other industries such as medical, transportation, shipping, identity. There's all sorts of other different industries that could be included in the blockchain adoption. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Also with us is Katie Jackson. Katie, go ahead.
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, and committee members. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I just wanted to say we support, I'm a longtime Oahu resident. I work with the state and national blockchain associations. And as we looked over these bills, we think this bill is an excellent one. A task force would bring Hawaii up to par with other states such as Texas, Wyoming, North Carolina, who already have task forces. And we also agree with the commissioner that this task force needs to represent more than just money transmission. It needs to look at the whole blockchain ecosystem. And therefore, it's important this task force include representatives from a wide sector of our society, academia, business, crypto exchanges, and the local Hawaiian community. We think that a diversity of opinions is important to get the regulation and the laws right. And so we highly support this bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Also submitting written testimonies were Barry Sato, Dara Carlin, Katie Jackson, support, Ryan Ozawa, support, Glenn Pablo, support, and Liam Ball. Is there anyone else here in Zoom that would like to testify?
Hello, this is Joe Kent. I'd like to testify.
Aloha, Joe. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Joe Kent, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. And I just, we appreciate your efforts on SB 2695 to create the Cryptocurrency Task Force. I agree with Commissioner Ikeda and Katie Jackson that broadening the scope is a good idea. Wyoming has a blockchain task force, which helped to create crypto-friendly legislation. And now that state is known as the crypto-friendliest in the nation. And hopefully that can happen here too.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Members, are there any questions? Okay, I have a question for Iris. If you can just very quickly just paint for us a vision, and when you say that you would like to see applications beyond financial purposes being explored, and you mentioned like medical, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of work being done on the blockchain, which is just really some digital, like a digital platform to store different pieces of information. And there has been some work done in the medical field to put your medical history on the blockchain. And then when you go to the hospital in an emergency, let's say you're totally unconscious, someone can access your medical history. to provide care. It's also being used in transportation in the shipping area to track, cargo. And so that has some good applications too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we're going to proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is SB 2697, which is related to virtual currency. It excludes the electronic transfer of virtual currency from the Money Transmitter Act. On our list of testifiers, we have Iris Ikeda. Go ahead, Iris.
Hi, thank you. And again, my name is Iris Ikeda. I'm the Commissioner of Financial Institutions, testifying on behalf of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. So this particular bill, as he said, eliminates the virtual currency transactions from our Money Transmitters Act. As you've seen in some of our other publications, we have been studying digital currency transactions in the Digital Currency Innovation Lab and have found that these transactions are not like the requirements in the money transmitter law. So we propose a different scheme for licensing digital currency companies. So to eliminate the digital currency transactions or companies from the money transmitters law, we think that that's fine, but without a separate or an additional licensing, there would be no regulation for digital currency companies. And if that's the intent of the legislature, we're fine with that too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Also on the list, Len Higashi for HTDC.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Len Higashi with Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our written comments. We also appreciate the intent of this measure to allow cryptocurrency to continue here in Hawaii. We think this session it is particularly important to pass enabling legislation. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with 2 years of a pilot project showing the utility and interest of crypto here in Hawaii and no path forward. So we definitely appreciate this measure. Our testimony points that we prefer the admin bill, and in short, we're here together with offering our support for Commissioner Ikeda and the regulation that she's proposing. Here available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Katie Jackson.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. So we really like this bill. This bill, along with a task force bill, would actually solve a problem that Hawaii State's facing right now, and that 61,000 account holders, local accounts have been opened because of the Digital Currency Innovation Lab. This lab is expiring in June, and unless there's legislation passed, many of these accounts could be frozen, the assets could be frozen. So this is actually, we think, the solution, along with the task force, to look at what good regulation looks like. This is a sensible act. In fact, the Conference of State Banking Supervisors wrote a letter to Senator Pat Toomey of the Senate Banking Committee, stating that money transmission doesn't really fit crypto. It's such a big ecosystem. It includes commodities, securities, digital privacy, identities, medical records, like the commissioner mentioned. It's a much bigger ecosystem, similar to what the internet was like. And so we encourage this money transmitter bill to be, crypto to be exempt, because 20 other states in the country don't have crypto in this. And we think that it would be wise to adopt the same mindset of the 1996 bipartisan legislators who passed the 1996 Telecoms Act, basically going from the landlines of telephones to the new internet. They decided then not to put the old centralized telecoms regulation framework on this new thing called the internet. They allow it to breathe, grow, and figure out what actually need to be regulated. We would encourage that to happen here by removing this law on money transmission. We don't think that the old mindsets, the old regulatory centralized banking mindsets work here in this new crypto blockchain ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. So submitting written testimony as well were Joe Kent with comments, Ryan Osawa, support, Barry Sato, support, Sean Cover, support, Alika Kane, support, Glenn Pablo, support, and Liam Ball, support. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to testify?
Chair, this is Joe Kent. I'd like to testify.
Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, so I'm Joe Kent with the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. We really would like to champion this bill as the best bill for allowing cryptocurrency in Hawaii. 20 other states don't require a license for virtual currency. I've looked through, they often have exemptions through a notice rather than a statute. So for example, Virginia puts out a notice that it doesn't regulate virtual currencies. And Hawaii has been kind of at the back of the pack. Other states have had many years of a head start on this issue, and we're so far behind that we believe opening up the regulations would really help. I know of a lot of Hawaii residents who were able to invest in cryptocurrency, and because of that are now able to afford a down payment on a house. If we overprotect Hawaii residents, we could prevent them from finding prosperity for themselves.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Members, questions? Okay, I do have a question for Iris. So Iris, I think there's, still people out there who may think of cryptocurrency as more like, there's negative, I guess, connotations as to what cryptocurrency is. And so could you provide us some background, I think, on how many unique investors there are really in Hawaii and what kind of value do those transactions translate to?
Yes, so thanks for asking that question. So right now in the DCIL, the Digital Currency Innovation Lab, we've posted the last quarter's statistics, and according to the third quarter of 2021, there's approximately 61,000 consumers that are signed up with our 15 digital currency companies that are participating in the lab. And the dollar value to that, according to the companies that are reporting, is close to $1 billion.
Wow. So I know that the admin has put forth a bill, and in fact, that bill is going to be heard tomorrow at a joint hearing, and that's SB 3076. So you kind of talked a little bit in your testimony about what would happen if the admin bill or the other bill, SB 3025, would fail. What would be the consequence?
So if there is, if the admin bill does not go through or become law this year, the DCIL would close on June 30th of this year. The consumers that are participating would have to do something with their accounts, and they have until December 31st of this year to close the accounts, or they will be unable to transact on those accounts. This disclosure was given to all of the consumers that have entered into the DCIL, so it should not be a surprise to them. So I think that the one thing that we are looking at is we are pretty hopeful that a licensing scheme can be enacted this year, or as this particular bill is suggesting, that there would be no regulation on digital currency for consumers.
Can you kind of tell us, prior to the sandbox that you had established, by the way, I know you've worked very hard on that, and I really commend you for that. So prior to that being set up though, because as it stands right now, crypto exchange companies are under the Money Remittance Act, right? So was there any activity prior to you setting up the sandbox?
So we know just from anecdotal stories that there was some activity going on prior to the sandbox. So, and we're probably more aware of this, or, DFI is probably more aware of this because, I started talking about this to the legislature back in 2015. So this is, in my opinion, this has been around for a long time. And I've had two separate types of bills, one for licensure and one for exemption for a few years. And, the legislature, unfortunately, was not able to pass any of those pieces of legislation. And so I decided instead to do a study to gather some information. And as it turns out, these transactions are not like money transmission. And they are, something brand new or not really fitting into any licensing scheme that we have. Hence, we have a new licensing scheme that we are proposing.
Okay. One last question for Katie, actually. Thank you, Iris. So you heard what Commissioner Iris Ikeda has said about this particular bill. Seems like there is not enough regulation. It's like a wild, wild west type of thing. That's not what you're proposing to have the crypto industries or exchanges to have, right?
Correct. That is not, we welcome regulation that has clarity. In fact, the industry is calling for that. They need clarity on what these regulations should look for. In fact, it's gotten, the President Biden is going to announce the next month via executive order, calling all the federal agencies to come together and come up with a federal regulation strategy, because right now the agencies, Security Exchange Commission, IRS, Commodities Exchange, they're all fighting over who should actually regulate crypto. And so it's a fast moving regulatory environment because the space is changing so fast. And as the commissioner said, initially, people thought it was a money transmission issue, but it's actually much bigger. It's, again, we call it Web 3.0. It's basically a protocol that allows you to transfer things of value, which could be art, music, commodities, securities, identities, passports, medical records. This space is so much bigger than just currency or money transmission. And so we're not asking for no regulation, quite the opposite. We're asking for sensible regulation that has been thought through, that's in concordance with what the federal regulators are going to say in the next probably 6 months to a year, hence the task force idea. So removing the transmission law is actually, it will free up the space to do what we did with the internet. In that 1996 telecoms law, the regulators there said, hey, this is a whole new ballgame, the internet. Let's step back. Let's not reinvent, let's reimagine regulation, because we can't take a t-shirt that fit our 2-year-old and expect it to fit our 5-year-old regulatory wise. We've got to totally rethink this thing in terms of regulation. So this, I would say, is just, it's a long game. Hawaii needs to think long. What kind of regulations will go the distance? Do legislators want to come back every session, changing and redoing licensure bills? I would respectfully say that the licensure scheme put forward that's being discussed tomorrow is actually not a good one, because it copies the 2015 New York bit license law, which is actually failing, and legislators are trying to repeal it right now because it drove all the crypto companies out of New York. So the regulatory question is really important, and it's why we need to get it right. Hence the desire to slow down, remove the restrictions, create a task force, let the federal guys lead on what this strategy should be, and then come back after letting the space breathe a little bit.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the third item on the agenda, the last item on the 310 agenda, which is SB 2698, which proposes a constitutional amendment on language related to the medium of exchange. And first up, actually, we do not have any testifiers on that one, but we did receive written testimony from Barry Sato, Glenn Pablo, and Liam Ball. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to testify on this third measure? Okay, hearing none, I think, Chair, we're ready to recess for decision making. Welcome back to the 310 agenda of the Energy, Economic Development and Tourism Committee. We have conferred as a committee, and here are the recommendations. on the three bills on this agenda. For SB 2695, it is to pass with amendments. And so here are the amendments. Let me go over them. Change a department where the task force will be placed. We heard the testimony from Director Hirai. For administrative purposes, it will be housed now under DCCA instead of Department of Budget and Finance. So we're changing the Director of Finance from that Director of Finance to Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs in the section outlining the task force members. We are inserting language that states President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives shall designate one member each to serve as co-chairpersons. We are amending line 4 of the task force membership to add Hawaii-based. So it now reads a representative of a Hawaii-based cryptocurrency exchange who shall be appointed by the governor. We're also amending line 7 of the task force membership to add Hawaii-based. So it now reads a representative of a Hawaii-based blockchain payment solution company who shall be appointed by the governor. So in addition, we're adding the following members based on the testimony received to the task force composition: a representative from the Division of Financial Institution, a representative from a Hawaii-based company focused on non-transactional blockchain, a representative from a Hawaii-based bank or financial institution. We're also amending, making members of the task force subject to Chapter 84, which governs standard of conduct. And finally, add to the task force scope of review to encompass other aspects of the industry besides possible legislation, including but not limited to the development of a plan for expansion of blockchain adoption in both the private and public sector. So for this one, Chair Wakai, do you mind taking the votes? Chair or Vice Chair recommends pass with amendments. Vice Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. For SB 2697 relating to virtual currency, we recognize that there are two crypto licensing bills that will be heard tomorrow during the CPN EET joint hearing, and one of which is the admin bill. And there's expectation that either of these two bills will pass, but we wanted to just have a legislation that's in our hip pocket just in case. So the recommendation is to pass with technical, non-substantive amendments. Vice Chair votes aye. Chair Wakai.
You want to have discussion first?
Oh, discussion?
Discussion. Okay, yes. So Chair votes aye. Senator Lucia votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair Wakai. For the third measure, for SB 2698, the recommendation is to defer this measure. So as we know, constitutional amendments are hard or complex to carry forth. And since the state's policy on cryptocurrency is still evolving, it makes sense to defer this bill indefinitely while things are getting sorted out. So that concludes the 310 agenda. We will adjourn, and the EET committee under the leadership of Chair Wakai will proceed with the next agenda. Adjourn. Mahalo, everyone.
Aloha and welcome to the GVO, the Government Operations Committee, and the EET committees meeting for the 3:30 agenda. I'm Sharon Moriwaki, Chair of the Government Operations Committee, and with me are our Vice Chair, Senator De La Cruz, Senator Chang, Senator Favela, and Senator Gabbard. And we are meeting with the EET committee. So the first bill, we have 3 bills that we will be considering. The first, or 2 bills, and then one with EET as the lead. The first bill is Senate Bill 2696 relating to virtual currency, allowing the Director of Finance to authorize state agencies to enter into virtual currency agreements to accept convertible virtual currency. Our first testifier is the Department of Budget and Finance, Director Hirai. I think I saw you on.
Good afternoon, chairs.
Morning. Good afternoon.
Committee members. I'm Craig Hirai, the Director of Finance. Department of Budget and Finance has serious concerns regarding this bill. Regulatory issues surrounding virtual currencies have not been resolved at the federal or state level, and it is uncertain what implementation issues may arise from adopting the acceptance of virtual currency payments. Available to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions? Let's see. Next up is Isaac Choi, Department of Taxation.
Hi, good afternoon, chairs. We're in strong opposition to this bill. I can't see when the time will be here when you'll be able to pay your taxes with cryptocurrency. Also, even in your preamble of the bill, you're saying that transactions are going to be anonymous. That is contrary to the good tax administration. In fact, it would hinder my efforts to protect the revenues of the state. I know this is a little bit late, Chair, but as you make your little task force and things like that, perhaps you should include the Department of Taxation. I know it's late, but when there's a lot of transactions and they're anonymous, it's going to be really hard to administer taxes. And if we're going to lose tax dollars, then we should know it right up front. So again, we're in strong opposition to this particular measure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have the Hawaii Bankers Association, Neil Okubayashi. With comments, is Neil Okubayashi on?
Not present, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kiri. Next, Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, Len Higashi. With comments, Len?
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees, Len Higashi, Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We offer comments. We appreciate the intent of this measure to pilot projects that demonstrate potential benefits of virtual currencies, but we also note many of the concerns from the various departments and agree. We do want to point out that enabling legislation is required this session for virtual currency transactions to continue in Hawaii, and that's probably step one. And something like this bill may come later. Thank you for the opportunity and available for questions.
Thank you, Len. We have Ryan Ozawa as individual in support. Is Ryan on? Can we have Katie Jackson with the Hawaii Blockchain Advocacy?
Yes. Hi. Aloha, chairs, vice chairs. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. A longtime Oahu resident, I work with and collaborate with the state blockchain and national blockchain associations. I wanted to come out and offer a different perspective and say this is a bill we'd actually would support. Why? Because digital payments are coming. Programmable money is happening, whether we want it to acknowledge it or not. Payments and salaries are being paid in Bitcoin. New York's new mayor and Miami's Mayor Suarez just took their Bitcoin salaries in Bitcoin, along with NFL players. 81 countries, according to Axios news organization, are already exploring central bank digital currencies. Stripe, PayPal, the very infrastructure of our payment system is being reworked to become digital. And so even this week, China is introducing its digital yuan to the world at the Olympics. So we feel it would be good for Hawaii to start to explore what would it look like to be joining that movement of digital payments? What would it look like to transact salaries or taxes? The IRS has said in 14-7 that digital payments Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are property. That's why they take taxes on capital gains. And so we think that this actually could be an area where Hawaii could adopt it through the City Coins program. It's a tokenization program where you can, a city can have its own coin, which then allows the city to use that funds as a treasury to fund its own projects. So we think that there's great possibility here. Of course, it would need to be thought about carefully in conjunction with the banking and taxation schemes here in Hawaii, but we wanted to offer a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I think the few other testimonies that I have are written. It's from Glenn Pablo in support and Gerard Silva in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify that's on Zoom? Okay, if not, members, any questions of the testifiers? Going back to Katie, I was listening in on the previous hearing, and there are a number of bills going through with task forces and a licensing bill that's also going through, that this bill itself is really requiring the state to enter into these virtual currency transactions. And so I'm just wondering, you're saying that we should support this bill might be premature, as Mr. Higashi has mentioned.
Terry, you make a great point. At the federal level, President Biden will be giving an executive order in the next month, asking his federal agencies to come up with a coordinated crypto strategy. So this is very much a work in progress at all levels statewide. However, you also have states like Arizona, which just dropped a bill trying to make Bitcoin the legal tender. You have countries like El Salvador, which adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. So the trajectory of money, programmable money, is here, and I think it will continue. I'd love to see Hawaii at the forefront of that, if possible. But yes, is it leaning forward? Definitely.
Thank you. Anyone else? I see that the Director of Finance is concerned without a regulatory scheme. Director, are you still there? Great. You're right.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm still here.
So,
yeah, no, just,
so have you in your testimony too, you've mentioned that you've looked at other states as well. I think Ohio was mentioned as having virtual currency adopted in 2018, but has since suspended it. Do you know any reason why?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, Chair. But I do have concerns about lack of a regulatory scheme at the federal and state level, as stated previously, and also, excuse me, what the Director of Taxation had to say. I mean, I just don't think, from what I've seen, that this state administration, the structure, the DAGs and Department of Tax were quite ready for it quite yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions of members? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next bill, which is SB 2203, relating to sustainable electronics management, requiring state departments and agencies to transfer electronic devices to DAGs to refurbish and distribute to eligible entities, and creates a special fund to administer the program. First up is Office of Information Practices, Director Cheryl Kakazu Park.
Not present, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next is Director Hirai with Budget and Finance.
We'll stand on our written testimony, Chair.
Next, the Department of Education.
Hi, good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. Christine Shaw, Acting Assistant Superintendent of the Office of Information Technology Services, testifying on behalf of Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi for the Department of Education. The department stands on its written testimony, providing comments on this bill. And we have proposed some language amendments and identified some challenges. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. The comptroller Department of Accounting and General Services, Comptroller.
Yep, good afternoon, Chair Hiroaki,
Aloha.
Vice Chairs and members of the committee. Kurt Otaguro, State Comptroller. The Department of Accounting and General Services truly appreciate the intent to be good stewards for electronic management and waste. However, the bill is written in a way that we have to oppose, strongly opposition to the measure as it's written. We have a lot of concerns and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, the State Procurement Office, Bonnie Kahakui.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Bonnie Kahakui for the State Procurement Office. We also appreciate the intent of the bill. However, we're in strong opposition and the reasons are laid out in our testimony. Thank you.
Mahalo. Cheryl Kai, should we go into the EET lead bill through SB 3334 since we have very little time left, I think.
Maybe, was there any questions on Senate Bill 2203 before we move on? Members of either committee? If not, thank you. We're going to move on to the last measure on this agenda. That is Senate Bill 3334 relating to government operations. First on our testifiers list, we have Chung Chang from DBED.
Chairs Wakai and Muriwaki, Vice Chairs Ms. Lucha and Dela Cruz and members of the committees. DBED. My name is Chung Chang, Deputy Director for DBED. We stand on our testimony supporting the intent of the measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chung. We have Kurt Otaguro from DAGS.
Afternoon, Chair Wakai, Chair Moriaki, members of the committee. Kurt Otaguro, State Comptroller. Accounting and General Services appreciates the intent and just offers comments and concerns. We stand by written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Next on our testifiers list, Ryan Andrews from the Stadium Authority.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of both committees. I'm Ryan Andrews, acting manager of Aloha Stadium. On behalf of the authority, I do want to thank both the legislature and the Department of Accounting and General Services for the many years of support that have gotten us to this point with regard to the new Aloha Stadium Entertainment District. From a macro perspective, the authority understands the intent of this measure to aggregate enterprise agencies and land development functions under the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. The authority is supportive of any and all efforts to continue momentum and progress that will lead to the completion of the NACED project. The authority is also appreciative of the funding proposed to support this endeavor. You have in our written testimony several comments on multiple sections of this measure and respectfully request your consideration on those recommendations, and I'll stand by if there are any questions related to that. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide this testimony and comments. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ryan. And we have Ed Sniffen from the Department of Transportation or his representative. Anyone from DOT?
Yes, aloha Chair Wakai. This is Dre Kalili for Edwin Sniffen, who is the administrative lead for the School Facilities Authority. And we submitted late testimony, but we're available for questions. And basically our comments are just that we're in the first 6 months of operations for the SFA, and we just respectfully request your consideration to maybe let us get up and running first, and then we can talk about how best to attach the SFA to either DBED or DOE or some other agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Dre. And I believe that's all we have for live testimony. Members, any questions of those who have joined us via Zoom? Nope. If not, we're going to take a brief recess prior to taking the vote. Recess.
Coming back to decision-making of the GVO EET committees, SB 2696, because of the movement in cryptocurrency, the recommendation is to defer. Also in SB 2203 relating to sustainable electronic management, because both the Department of Accounting and General Services and the State Procurement Office that would have to administer this find it difficult to do. This bill is also being deferred. to you, Chair Wakai, on
So
3334.
to our last bill, Senate Bill 3334 relating to government operations, the chair would have conferred with our members. I would like to move this measure out with a few amendments, 3 specifically. And those 3 amendments were suggested by the Stadium Authority. One is to make sure that the pro rata share for the department's administrative assessment does not apply to the Stadium Authority, so they can get full funding, whatever that number might be. The second amendment is to have the UH and Department of Education remain on the board as non-voting members. Right now, the bill has them as voting members. We're going to strike that and keep it a status quo for their presence on the board. And the last amendment is to designate the Stadium Authority as the expending agency for any capital improvement funds authorized. So those are the 3 suggestions. Any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
For Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, as it relates to SB 3334, Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye for the remaining members. Are there any reservations? Any nays? Chair, your recommendations adopted.
The Government Operations Committee.
Sharon, just one second.
Yeah.
I think because we haven't voted with this. yet,
Oh,
actually go
okay,
through.
I'll go through. Okay, all right. So Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair, with 5 votes, your recommendations adopted.
Chihu. GVO?
For Government Operations Committee, SB 3334. Oh, okay, which one?
Sorry.
He's practicing.
We're trying to be efficient, that's
He's
why.
practicing.
Go ahead.
Okay, for Government Operations Committee, same recommendation. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair Dela Cruz, take vote, please.
Oh, unmute.
SB 3334 recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator Gabbard.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Recommendation adopted.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We adjourn. Aye.
Aye.